Hi, everyone, and welcome to this evening session. My name is Sarah Lowe's, and I'm the facilitator for the Directors Panel series on environmental leadership, taking action. I'll give a more extended introduction in a second, but since we have Curtis here and it is the Directors Panel series, I'll let Curtis start us off.
Thanks so much, Sarah, and good evening, everyone. So happy that you could join us for this Directors Panel series on environmental leadership, taking action. As you know, environmental leadership is one of the commitments that we have in our multi-year plan, and it is one that is so critical and so important to all of us. Without environmental leadership, I believe that really and truly nothing else matters. I think it deserves more attention, it deserves more focus, and it's something that I hope that we're able to do this evening through illuminating and highlighting all of the wonderful things that are taking place and all of the things that we need to do as a school board and as a society to ensure that environmental leadership stays directly in focus and in front of us, because that's how we're going to get through this world together. In Catherine Hayhoe's book, Saving Us, she talked about the importance of having conversations about environment and climate. And so that's what we're doing here this evening. We are just ensuring that the message reverberates, that we hear it again and again, and that through the hearing, we will then take action. So I'm so happy that you have joined us, and I look forward to everything that will be said. And I know that as a result of today's conversation, it will lead to greater actions, greater influence from the HDSB, but the broader community as well, because the environment is important to all of us. Thank you so much and have a great evening.
Thank you, Curtis. I really like Catherine Hayhoe's book. I think it's a great way to demonstrate that we all have the power to be able to start these conversations in our own communities, and those conversations hold a lot of weight and can count as taking action on climate. Before we go any further, though, I want to just quickly present the land acknowledgement and share that. So I'd like to honor the land and territory today. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations in the Métis, from the Anishinaabe to the Ottawandarin, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis. These lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. And there's so many great connections to make with the land acknowledgement when we're talking about sustainability and environmentalism. For one, I think it should go without saying that Indigenous people, Black people, and people of color are disproportionately impacted by the effects of climate change and environmental racism. But I want to actually bring attention to a lesson I learned from Dakota Brandt at the National Truth and Reconciliation Conference a couple of years ago. And her name actually means shining constellations, or causing the stars to be bright. And I think the language in Indigenous languages is so poetic and powerful because it's connected and rooted so much in the environment. And Dakota was sharing about the different perspectives between Europeans and Indigenous people in treaties. And treaties in a Western perspective are between two people and an agreement, usually over a resource. But in the, she's a Mohawk lady, and in the Haudenosaunee belief system, treaties are between three parties. People are together in one, the land and the resources are another part of the treaty, and the third part of the treaty is actually called the coming faces, and it's where they believe and acknowledge that children and the future, the spirit starts in the sky world and then moves into the ground, and children choose their mothers as they walk over top of them. And I think that's just such a beautiful way of seeing the world. If we all acknowledge that the ground had the future and children's voices embedded in it, I think we would really approach the world in a different way. And because of the impacts of colonialism, we've lost a lot of that language and we've lost a lot of those stories. And I think the world would be a much better place if we were able to hear and share and celebrate those stories. So with that, before we get too far, I'd like to just go around and introduce everybody on the panel. So JC, maybe I can start with you. And then I will also, am I still sharing my screen? I'm going to go back to sharing the introductions here. So this is an introduction framework that I'm borrowing from Maurice Sinclair. He used to be the former chairman of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And he asked us to reflect on where we were coming from and where we're going and why we are here today. And answering some of those questions, we'll be able to get an idea of who we are. So JC, if you don't mind introducing who you are.
Thanks, Sarah. First of all, I'm very honored to be part of this panel. I am from Tecumseh Public School, where I run the Eco Club, and I've been involved with the environment since as long as I can remember. Since I was in elementary school, I remember writing letters to our member of provincial parliament, asking them to take action about the ozone layer in like 1991. So ever since then, I just remember having an impact on me, and that being something that I thought about throughout the years. And I've always, the environment has always been a passion of mine, and it's probably one of the favorite parts about teaching for me is bringing that love for the environment into the classroom. I'm lucky at Tecumseh. We have a really involved parent council who has been able to secure us a few grants, and we've worked with the HDSB facilities staff to set up some accessible planters. So we've really been bringing students out and fostering a love of gardening at our school. And it's one of my favorite things about teaching is to see students interact and learn from the environment while they're in nature and outdoors, and just fully become engaged in that type of learning. Where I'm going is I just want to continue along this path. I'm really excited to be part of this panel to learn from everyone here.
Thanks. And I'll just provide some context that I recently had a EPFO workshop with JC about a couple months ago. And then we went to the Learning for a Sustainable Future provincial conference at the AgaCon a couple of weeks ago. And Halton actually had, it was a provincial wide conference, but Halton had the largest representation of teachers at that conference. And it felt really great to be in a room of 60 to 70 educators, and almost every a third of us were from Halton. And it was a really important moment for me because it felt like we had been fostering and building that community, and that we were becoming leaders in a province-wide perspective. So I'm excited that JC's here and that we can continue the conversation. How about Hassan? Do you mind introducing yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm honored to be on this panel and be talking with such great figures such as Dr. Curtis Ennis, Mr. Pradeep Naga, and Sarah Lowe's, and JC Jones. And it's a great privilege. I want to start with talking about my roots. I am Canadian Pakistani, and I really think that it's important that we all remember that as we go forward. And growing up, I started to learn more about the effects of climate change and how it plays such a big part on the environment and the different people. And so that's why I applied for being the co-chair of the elementary environmental leadership subcommittee. And that's what I'm here for, and that's where I'm going to continue to go and continue to work on.
Thanks so much, Hassan. I'm excited to hear more about your work in that regard. And Kalina, do you mind introducing yourself?
No, not at all. So I want to just extend a thank you to everyone on the team for inviting me here. It's a great privilege, and I'm very grateful to have the opportunity and the experience to be able to voice my concerns and share my thoughts and opinions on such a pertinent topic. And it's not an opportunity that everyone is able to get. So I'm very fortunate to have that privilege to be able to share what I find is important or what is around me in my environment that surrounds me. So my name is Kalina. I go by she, her pronouns. For me, where I came from, I'm a second generation immigrant. So my parents are Indian immigrants from India who came to Canada, and then I was born here. And throughout my upbringing, I've always been taught how important the environment is to us, especially in my culture. The environment holds a very significant importance, and it's something that it's held in very high regard. So I've always been taught to take care of the environment around me, and it's something that's been offered to me, not I'm offering something to the environment. It's the other way around because the resources that are available to me are because of the environment that's around me. So where am I going? So I'm working towards fostering sustainable local communities, not just in Halton, but beyond. And alongside Hassan, I also work as the secondary co-chair for the Environmental Leadership Subcommittee in the Student Senate, where we work and create projects to enhance environmental sustainability across the Halton District School Board. And in my free time, I'm very passionate about the climate change, and how we can take action as students. So in my free time, I spend my time helping out in gardens, community gardens, or other external organizations that I'm a part of, non-for-profit organizations, and helping them out and doing as much as I can for future generations to come in Canada so that they have the resources that I have as well.
That's amazing. Thank you. I know a lot of the work that the Student Senate does and has done historically. They were really instrumental in petitioning the school board to declare a climate emergency several years ago, which was the backbone really of a lot of teacher and board-wide policies that came out of that work from the Student Senate. One of them being the Environmental and Sustainability Leadership Award, which is an award created by students for students. And we just got it off the ground last year, but we're starting to get more publicity about it. So thanks. And I'm excited to hear more about your experiences. Curtis, do you mind joining us with the introductions as well?
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. So my name is Curtis Ennis. I'm the director for the Halton District School Board, and I am delighted to be leading with an amazing team of both Board of Trustees and senior team who have put together the multi-year plan that, of course, focuses as one commitment, environmental leadership. Certainly I was born in Jamaica, and both of my both maternal and paternal grandparents, they lived off the land. I mean, it was the environment and the land and what it offered is what really sustained our family for generations. And so I grew up knowing that there's an appreciation for what the land offers because it sustained us in ways that are, just you just can't imagine. It was the bread and butter of our family on both sides of my family. As a young person, I spent a lot of time with both set of grandparents on the farm, working. Because that's what they did. And so I little known fact is that I actually studied agriculture and plants and animals at before I came to Canada. And it's something that is ingrained in me, and so I still love planting. I still love the environment. I still love all of what nature has to offer, and it's something that brings me personal joy, and just to be involved. And so every year I do my share of personal planting just to help to sustain the environment, and I hope that through actions that we're going to take as a board, I mean, I look forward to us doing much more and having greater impact for years to come, and that will impact generations to come.
Thank you so much. And I'll just formally introduce myself. My name is Sarah Lowe's. I'm a teacher at Pilgrimwood now, but I was born and raised in Burlington actually, and grew up in the Halton District School Board system. So I have a innate and deep connection to the local community in Halton, and really want to continue building a sustainable community here for that reason. I ended up doing my master's in environmental education at Boise about 10 years ago, and I was part of a advocacy group trying to get learning gardens into teachers' colleges at that time, because we wanted to be able to teach teachers how to use learning gardens with their students. And then I took that proposal and came to Pilgrim Wood. We fundraised about $25,000 and implemented the proposal that we had planned at the Teachers College there. So we now have 12 raised bed vegetable gardens and an outdoor rock seated area, an outdoor classroom. And lots of that work was made possible with Suzanne Burwell. She has been working with the Halton District School Board for at least since my entire time here, which is now 12, 13 years. And I know she was definitely here before that with the sustainability and facilities initiatives in the school board. She's been a wealth of knowledge. She's supported so many environmental groups and schools in getting their projects going on various different levels. I know she's really active with the Student Senate as well. And I say this to give a shout out to Suzanne because she is retiring, and I want to acknowledge the effort and the work that she has provided, because those are big shoes to fill, and I will dearly miss her as part of the sustainability puzzle in our school board. And then so that's yeah, Suzanne was really helpful in creating those learning gardens at my school, and I'm here today to help facilitate and engage everybody in conversations around sustainability and taking action. So with that note, maybe well, I want this to be conversational. Feel free to jump in. I know Pardeep had suggested that we talk about our eco superpowers as a starting point. So if you had any eco superpower, there's certainly a lot of different causes that can pull at our heartstrings. I wonder, maybe we'll start with the students. Kalina, what would be your superpower from an eco perspective, or what would you use your superpower for environmentally?
So I think that's a great question. There's a lot in terms of like climate action, types of action we can take in order to foster sustainable communities. There's so many different causes that pull at like my heartstrings that make me feel very vulnerable, but also make me inclined to feel like I really need to do something as a student. I really need to create an impact. But I think one of the main causes, I think you've also mentioned this earlier, revolves around environmental racism. So I actually didn't even know this was a thing. Even though my parents are first generation immigrants, we've never had to face environmental racism wherever we've been. But this is a cause that I've been doing a lot of learning throughout. I've been taught a lot about environmental racism recently, and it's come to my attention how serious that is, especially when we think about how our person of color, Black and Indigenous communities, the marginalized communities, are mostly affected in negative ways. When we see impacts of climate change, it mostly directly relates or affects these communities in negative ways. And I watched some documentaries. One was from Elliot Page, was I think it named "There's Something in the Water," which talked about the impacts of the various Indigenous and Black communities across Canada, mainly in Nova Scotia, and how they had to face the impacts of like bad air quality around them in their neighborhoods, which is not something that I have ever had to face in my life. So it is a great privilege that I haven't had to face that, but knowing that there's Indigenous communities that are not far from where I live who have to face the negative impacts of climate change because of environmental racism really pulls at my heartstrings. It really makes me feel like I need to do something about that. And I think I can also directly relate this to the Ring of Fire project that's taking place not far from Thunder Bay, which is not far from us, where we see there's a mining project taking place there. And all the debris that's going to come from that mining project will mostly go in the lakes and the ponds of the Indigenous communities that live around that area. So Indigenous communities who rely heavily on fishing as one of their main sources of nutrients, as main sources of meal, will be directly impacted because the fish will obviously, the population will significantly decrease because of that. And the fact that they have mined this securely close to the Indigenous communities really creates a sense of that I need to create change in my community and make sure that for generations to come, and even now, something like this doesn't take place, especially when we're thinking about truth and reconciliation, how we can reconcile with Indigenous communities.
Wow, Kalina, you are so well spoken on the topic of environmental racism. Like, congratulations. It's not an easy topic to talk about. Um, and maybe it's worth just defining for everybody that environmental racism speaks to how Black, Indigenous, and people of color are disproportionately impacted by environmental causes. And that can be under resourced in a variety of ways. So their land value, for example, or land value can be, land value is lower next to a dump or next to a highway, which creates pollution in the air. And then we look at the communities that are in these lower income areas, and we see lower health scores and things like this. And that's what we're trying to talk about when we're talking about environmental racism. I'm not super familiar with the Ring of Fire in Thunder Bay, so thank you for bringing that to my attention. But I am familiar with Chemical Valley in Sarnia as well, and a very similar situation where a lot of industry is there and the Indigenous population is receiving a lot of negative health impacts because of that. So thank you so much. Hassan, do you have an eco superpower, and what would you do with it, and what would you save, and which issue speaks to you the most?
Yeah, so growing up, I always loved the Lorax, and by seeing like how much deforestation and how many of these small things like cutting a tree, breaking a plant, etc., how it affects the community and the people who have to pay for it. I feel very privileged living in Canada, where we have a lot of clean water sources and a lot of trees and stuff where I can just go outside and feel happy. But when you go into other places, you do feel like, how can I help there? And I feel very privileged, and that makes me want to come on this role as a co-chair in the environmental subcommittee. One power is that one thing I would like to do is try to display voices of many students who want to help. Because I know a lot of students in my school who really want to display their voice in the HSB and want to tell them people that I support this, and that's all I want to share.
Yes, thank you. And I would really like to support and reinforce how important student voice is in our schools. We gear so many of our lessons, our whole school events, the celebrations that we recognize because of the voices of the students. And so I will just, you're already great advocates, but just continue raising your voice and sharing your opinions because we're listening.
I just want
JC,
to commend.
yes,
Yeah,
please.
sorry, can I just say that I want to commend both students for their leadership, and I think that's really your superpower is how you inspire our younger students, because I'm used to teaching students who are in about grade 3 or 4. They're so excited about helping with the environment, and then sometimes I see that wane as it gets a little bit older, and for me, I'm trying to sustain that interest in the environment. And so to see both of you speaking so well about your visions and about your passion for the environment, that just really fills my heart and just makes me feel so happy to know that there are students out there like you that are still so passionate.
Did you have a superpower, JC, that you wanted to share, or a cause that speaks to you?
I think that I really go by student interest, and I'm really trying to follow the lead of my students, and whatever makes them excited and happy is what I try to focus on for that year. So I'm a bit of a chameleon in that way, where when I have kids that are really excited about something, that's what I try to follow. And I do think we get bogged down a lot with the climate crisis. I really worry about students' mental health. And so we really, really try to focus. I'd say that my biggest goal is to make environmental leadership something that students understand the dangers of climate change, but they celebrate in themselves the change they can make. And I was so happy, Hassan, when you mentioned the Lorax, because it's that sort of feeling that I want students to have, and I want them to have that hope in their hearts, and I want them to feel like at the end of the day they've done something. I think Sarah was at the meeting I was at where we talked about the Little Hummingbird book, where the little hummingbird is trying to put out a giant forest fire. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. And it can only put a few drops, and the other animals are saying, well, it's pointless. And this one little hummingbird is just doing everything it can. And I always share that story with my students, because everyone needs to care a little bit. And if we all care a little bit, it'll make a huge difference. So seeing the two of you speak about what you're doing in your schools is just amazing to me. And I think that just trying to keep that hope alive is my superpower, and trying to keep kids feeling like they are making a difference. No matter how big or small their contribution, it matters.
If I may just jump on that, Sarah. Yeah, I really love that, JC, just to see Hassan and Kalina and just the hope that it inspires in our students to continue to do the work. A similar anecdote to the one you shared, JC, is the story about the starfish. You heard about the person walking along the beach, and they saw just thousands and thousands of starfish just lying on the sand. And the person was just throwing them back into the ocean, and someone said to them, well, what, you're wasting your time. It's not going to make a difference. And the response was, it made a difference to the one that I just saved. And so, to your point, like, it's the accumulation of all of the small actions that each of us will take that I think will make a difference cumulatively. So I think that there's power in that.
And JC, if I may just build off of what you just said, if that's all right. I also wanted to commend you. Hats off for being a teacher that really promotes environmental sustainability in the classroom, because I know I've been like very passionate about something like climate action and how students can take actions, or how students can foster a sustainable community in their neighborhoods or in their environment around them, only because of some of the teachers that I've met, especially through elementary school. As a secondary student now, when across my elementary years, I've met some of the greatest teachers who've taught me to be passionate about a crisis like this, and how important it is for students, this newer generation, this newer wave of students, to be equally passionate about such a important, pertinent topic, because as a newer generation, it's up to us. It's going to be in our hands soon. We'll be the future lawmakers, or the future, we'll be the future people that will be speaking out about this issue. So it's important that we're well educated and we know about what there is left to do, what we should be doing. So hats off to you for being a teacher who really implements that in a classroom, because I know maybe the students right now in your class might not find something like that so valuable, but when they go across elementary and they reach secondary, they'll be like, okay, so I had teachers in elementary who really helped me know what is important right now, know what to stand for. And this is something that I'm passionate about. And while they reach high school, they'll have the tools they need to create change and create an impact on marginalized communities. So I really think it's so important when teachers bring that in the classroom, that type of learning, because it really makes a difference for the students to know about what's going on around them, especially when it comes to important topics like climate change and student action.
Yeah,
Thank
JC,
you.
and
Yes, this is making me really feel like we need to connect more with our high school students to bring, to see the fruits of our labor in elementary, and see where you've taken things.
Yes, JC, and I really appreciate you bringing the mental health aspect up so early in the conversation, because we know that eco-anxiety in youth is rising. And I think it's so important that we give students the opportunity to take action on climate, because that's where they get that power, that hope, the optimism. We had a student project started many years ago at Pilgrim Wood called the Big Pull. And we were just going for walks in the trails, and we noticed that there was a plant that was, more frequent and popular than the other plants. And we did some investigation and some inquiry, and what is this plant, and realized that it was garlic mustard, so an invasive plant that was slowly taking over the forest floor behind our school. And for a couple periods we were trying to take it out, and we were going for walks and we couldn't get very far, because everyone always wanted to take out the garlic mustard, because it felt so powerful to be taking it out and getting your hands in the dirt, and it felt like you were ripping out a problem with the world in some ways. And it just continued to grow, and we were spending so much class time ripping out this garlic mustard. We turned it into a club during recesses, and it grew, and over 5 years we ended up getting about 1,000 participants. We partnered with the local high school, and the high school students came back and we mapped out the whole forest, and we had different zones. We had community partners. The Halton Environment Network was there. The region came, and we actually had 3 other schools get bussed in as well. And it was this amazing community moment where schools were working with other schools, and high school students were there, and we were all taking out this invasive species in our forest. And we actually made a short documentary about it that was screened at Halton Green Screens on a big screen at film.ca. And it was really just so much effort from different community partners that made that happen. And it was leading with student voice and student interest in year 1, and it had grown to such an amazing event. So it really speaks to the partnership and the power of student voice. So with
I
that,
think garlic mustard is the perfect analogy to, or I guess the starfish and the hummingbird stories are a perfect analogy for that too, because it's one of those things that you see and it's so overwhelming. I know when you go for a hike and you notice, as soon as someone pointed out to me what garlic mustard was, you can't not see
Yeah, you
it.
see
And
it
it's
everywhere.
and you do think like, what am I going to do? But once you start pulling it, and it's really contagious. And I notice with my own kids and my husband now, whenever we're on walks, we live near the bike trail in Burlington, and there's garlic mustard, and we have to stop and pull it. And I think that it's just such a satisfying feeling to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we use the International Day of Biodiversity. I think it's usually around May 22nd. That's our big pull day. And so I encourage everybody to mark that day on their calendar and have a look for invasive species. Oops, sorry.
So it's
On
still
their
an
nature walks.
annual event at your school?
It is. I mean, we had such amazing success with it that we actually removed so much species, environmental or garlic mustard, that there wasn't a lot. And we had all these schools that were like, "Are we coming back next year? That was such a great event." And it was like, we don't have anything else to pull. Like and then I suggested we look at their communities and see if we could bus to theirs. But then we actually renewed the effort with Conservation Halton, and they were bringing in native species, and so it turned into a tree planting and native species planting. And so we've been doing that more so yearly to try and bring back more of that biodiversity and the native species in the forest. So it's just been excellent learning for responsibility and citizenship, and the community coming together, really hands-on active learning. It's been really great. I'm wondering about the other environmental projects that maybe are happening in your worlds, in your schools. Like, what is one of your favorite or a highlight of a sustainable action project that maybe you've been part of? Hassan, do you have anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, so in my school, the Eco Club is very determined and has been working really hard during this year on like working hard to like lower our footprint and like save electricity, and adding green bins to every the second floor. And I feel like these small things really make a big change. Like your story, Sarah, it starts as a spark and it becomes a fire. And so I really like that analogy to like keep me going, that I can do a lot of hard work like this. And in my school, I also see a lot of trash built up on the blacktop and near the parking lot, because we're connected to a park. And from that park, from like gust and wind, a lot of that trash travels towards our school, and a lot of our students have voiced that we don't like it. It's disgusting. I don't like it a lot. And so me and my team have worked towards adding more recycle bins and cleaning up over there in that area, to contacting the leader of our ward to just handle that situation. And I feel like a lot of our students are being very happy now, and they also kind of feel like determined that like I can do something like that too.
That's great. And Kalina, do any environmental initiatives or action projects come to mind for you as a highlight?
Of course, there are so many. One of the current ones that are taking place at Iroquois Ridge, where I attend as a high school student. One of them is a partnership with our green team, our eco club, along with some Generation Green participants from the Halton Environmental Network that attend Iroquois Ridge as well. And they created a collaboration where they have a food drive where you can donate non-perishable foods. So you might think, okay, how does this relate to climate action, or how does that like make an impact? Well, the whole point, the whole incentive behind that food drive was to eliminate food waste because we see so much of that in our communities as privileged people. It's really easy to just throw out the food that might be going bad or buy extra because well there's a sale right now and food prices are going up, so might as well stock up on food. And when it goes bad, there's so much wastage that takes place in communities, especially like across Oakville. So this community or this team is like a group of people that work towards eliminating that food waste that we see in Oakville. So they're going to be measuring the amount of food waste that takes place in Oakville, working alongside Halton Environmental Network, and then use these non-perishable foods as an incentive to stop this food waste. Another project as well is something that we're doing in Senate currently as well. So Hassan and I both lead respective projects. One of the ones I lead is directly correlated to sustainable development goal number 11. So I tried my best to make sure that all these goals that we had in mind, or all these ideas that we had in mind that were also brainstormed by our committee, were directly related to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So Sustainable Development Goal number 11 is to make sure that we have sustainable cities and communities. So what we did in order to like correlate to that theme was to we had our little committee where we decided to create a video as a way to showcase the different sustainable means of transportation across Halton. So how you can get to school or somewhere around your community sustainably, as opposed to a singular person riding in a car by themselves, because that obviously is a much bigger carbon footprint. And as a high school student, when I come to school, I see in our kiss and ride every day, there are so many cars. There's always a traffic jam. There's like just cars and cars and cars. And when you see like students coming out of these cars, it's always just one student coming out of the car. Sometimes it's two or three, depending on how many siblings go to that school, but it's usually just one student. And when I look at that, I'm like, look at that big carbon footprint we see, like each parent dropping off one singular kid. And there's a huge traffic jam where all the cars are just stuck there. Everyone's honking at each other in the middle of the parking lot, like at 8:30 in the morning when school starts. So when you look at that, it's like, okay, like this is a pretty big carbon footprint. So when we decided to brainstorm ideas on what we can do to help solve this problem, we decided to create a video where we can showcase the different ways we could get to school, or different ways we can get around our communities, like either it's busing. Oakville actually made just a quick note, Oakville actually made for youth ages 12 to 17, busing is free now as long as you have a Presto card. So it really like matches with that climate incentive to create and foster more sustainable communities. So either it's busing or walking to school, carpooling, skateboarding, or even biking. And I know Iroquois Ridge has recently really improved their bike rack system where they have more and more to encourage students to bike to school as opposed to just singularly drive with just one kid and one parent in the same car. So those are just some projects that are taking place currently in my world.
If I may, Sarah, thanks, Colina, for bringing up the parking situation in the car. It's a annual conversation and a perpetual conversation that we have around. I don't know, what can we do better to encourage more climate ready and environmentally friendly ways of getting to school. So thank you for that. We continue to try to brainstorm how to fix that. But one project that I'd like to highlight, Sarah, was last year we had the first climate ready school ground at Irma Colson. And as a board, we were really proud to work with Evergreen, one of our partners in the environment, to make sure that the school ground was transformed into a hub of learning with native plants, making sure it had accessibility, community use, and of course it's a place of learning. So it's one of those things where they thought about just about everything that would sustain learning in an outdoor environment, for a school ground. And we have so many school grounds that of course we have a lot of the blacktop that's paved over, and so they were able to just transform that ground into permeable soil that could deal with rainwater and all of those things that will help reduce the damage of some of the things that we have done that we really need to address. So that's one project. So thanks to most of the senior team, senior leaders in our board, and our partners in working on that. I think we need to see more of those kinds of things on a large scale across the system.
And yeah, Kalina, there's two things that you mentioned that I wanted to touch on as well. Thank you so much for bringing in the Sustainable Development Goals. So those are 17 goals created by the United Nations for a sustainable world. We're supposed to try and achieve them by 2030. It's there's some successes and some work needed around the clock there. But basically, it does provide an excellent framework for moving complex organizations forward, because with the 17 goals, actually I have a picture of them here. We really can see so many initiatives that are happening in our schools at a variety of levels. So work on, let's see here, like zero hunger or no poverty may look different at the administrator level or at the superintendent level or at the student level, but we know that our facilities team is also working on the issue of reducing our energy imprint, and it may look different because they're talking about I know solar panels are coming in at a couple of different schools as well, but and then reducing energy at home, where we're trying to lower our thermostats depending on the season to reduce our energy footprint. And then how that looks in a classroom will also look different, but at least we're calling it all the same thing. We're all acknowledging, okay, this is goal 7, and it feels a lot better and like we're working in community towards achieving these goals. So I'm hopeful, and it's great to hear that the students are using this language. It's language that we're using and encouraging across the board. And I notice in different workplaces as well that people are starting to work on those. The other thing you mentioned, Kalina, that I thought was really important was, and Hassan as well, about the food waste. So I'm not sure if people are familiar with Project Drawdown. It's a resource that has basically 75 to 100 solutions to solve climate change. So where we're at right now is basically that we don't need to be researching new solutions. We have the solutions that can solve climate change. It's more about implementing those and encouraging governments to implement those solutions. And from that Project Drawdown, there is a climate solutions board game that was created in Canada, actually. A really fun board game if you can get your hands on it. And it helps you document and organize the solutions from greatest to least impact. And we looked at it as an eco club, and we narrowed in on the top 10 and the top 5 solutions. And in the top 3, reducing food waste is one of the #1 solutions that globally we can use to reduce our carbon footprint, and moving to a plant-rich diet. And those are 2 things that we can do in our schools that students and teachers and staff can have an impact on. So I really like the ideas of reducing reducing our food waste and moving to plant-rich diets, because those are huge solutions for us across the board. Oh, does somebody want to chime in? No?
I was going to say, there was one thing that I wanted to talk about our own project, but then once Kalina began speaking, it reminded me of something that's sort of been on the back burner for years. I've been thinking about it, but our eco team always tries to take public transit on different field trips, or my class has taken public transit. And I would love to see something where we could work with a community partner, work with the city of Burlington or the city of Oakville or Milton, all of the Halton cities, but to try to create field trips that are actually integrated with tourism hotspots in our communities, and try to get partners for busing. And now you have to have a Presto card, which is a bit different. It used to be with an adult could take as many under 12 children as they could. So I would go on a bus with 15 students. Now everyone has to have a Presto card, and that's a bit of a barrier, especially for students who are new to Canada, whose parents maybe don't have all of their ID. So it would be really great just moving forward. I think I'll just say it in this group, sort of to put it out there, and then maybe we can connect about it later sometime. But it would be really cool to see the museums in Burlington Public Transit, or sorry, I'm using my own city, but you know what I mean. Just to get some really cool hot spots and promote teachers to use it, because I know that there are, at my school, I would say 90% of teachers have never ridden our local city bus because we're such a car heavy society. And it's just a really cool way for teachers and students to explore public transit. So that's something that I would like to get going. That every year I think, oh, this is the year. And then, with the pandemic restrictions and things always seem to interrupt it. But that's one thing that I think would be really fun and interesting. And another thing that I'm excited about our school doing, the year before the pandemic shutdowns, one of my favorite things of all time was our Sustainable Fashions fashion show. And we had students from grades 3 all the way to grade 8. We went to thrift shops, we had donations brought in, CBC Marketplace came in, and we did a big follow-up to one of their fast fashion episodes. So they filmed us with our clothing drive, and then we took a lot of the clothes that we took in and we repurposed them, and students, ripped apart clothes, made new things. They had every one of the 7 R's of sustainable fashion. So reusing, renting, repurposing, refurbishing, reducing. There was all of those things were featured, and every student got to create an outfit. And it was just such a fun way to bring the school together. And that kind of goes along with my keeping eco clubs light and fun, and it really attracted a whole lot of other students who normally wouldn't call themselves eco club kids. They really got into it. So I think sometimes it's fun to pull those things together, that get the creative types and different leaders in schools together.
Those are great projects. That's awesome. Thinking about that and being mindful of the time as well. Moving forward, and if we were to dream big, I'm interested to hear what everybody's perspective and thoughts are on, what sustainability looks like in Halton in the next 5 years. Where do we want to go? What does that look like? What kinds of things would you want to see? How would you know that we're there? Maybe, I don't know, Curtis, if I could start with you on that one. Sustainability in Halton, at the end of the 5-year plan, what are you hoping for? What does that look like for us? Oh, no, I can't hear you. Okay, yeah, we'll look at, does anyone else have a vision for the future that they would like to see in schools or community? What does it look like to be sustainable in the next
I can
5 or
chime
10
in.
years? Yeah, sure, Kalina.
All right. So for me, I think the next 5 to 10 years probably would not be changed for the better, might be even worse, which is why it's so important that we highlight that we need to take action, which is why it's so important that we have discussions and panels like this, which highlight the need for advocacy and the need for impact. So in my opinion, I think the next 5 to 10 years, if we do take impact, if we do take action on such important topics like climate change, climate action, it's going to be a much more a diverse community where we foster sustainable means of transportation, where we limit the amount of food waste, and we completely reduce our fast fashion, which is something that is another problem that we see in our society today. So I also wanted to briefly touch on where we could see our school board in the next 5 to 10 years, relating to one of the another projects that I run in the Student Senate, which is the Student Sustainability Award, which I believe was also brought up earlier during our discussion. So Hassan and I are in charge of leading that award this year, and we worked alongside the graphic designer of the HTSB, our wonderful student trustees, the rest of our environmental leadership subcommittee. So shout out to them, and Miss Burwell. We worked directly with her, and together we created the Student Sustainability Award. And as it was created last year, we brought it up a step further. We decided to advertise it. We started off very early so we can, advertise it all across the Student Senate's Instagram, get it implemented, get it redesigned, et cetera, where that award, the meaning behind it was to promote, encourage, and celebrate the different actions that have or could be taken to foster environmental sustainability. And I think awards like these really encourage students to take action. Although it's like an incentive to tell them to create an impact, it really does work on its own because it shows students that they have the opportunity to do something. So it's not just on adults, it's students as well. If they want to see change in their community, it's up to them to create the impact on their community. And I also personally in the environmental leadership subcommittee and my school's team, along with another organization which I'm part of, which is Fridays for Future, the Toronto version. We always try to make sure that our initiatives are related to partnership, and I think that was very much brought up across this discussion tonight. But I think that's something that we can definitely see within the next 5 to 10 years in the HCSB. A lot of partnerships with external non-for-profit organizations or local organizations like Oakville Green or Burlington Green or even Halton Environment Network. And I think partnership is something that's vital to ensure a sustainable community and strengthening relationships, which also, fun fact, directly relates to Sustainable Development Goal number 17, which is partnership for the goals. And so I've met so many people that are so close to me through the same passion of fostering sustainable local communities. And throughout partnership, I think we can create a community, an environment where everyone's passionate about having a better future, more sustainable future for generations to come.
Yes, Kalina.
You
Oh my
did. You did.
gosh.
You don't want anybody to speak after that.
No. She's
That's
coming
like
for your job.
that's like a mic drop, Kalina.
Uh, yeah, that's hard to follow for sure. Are there any other ideas for what the future looks like for Halton and where we want to be?
Yeah, so if I may add on to Kalina, I feel like Halton, if you want to foster this community that's simple and can grow into an ecological like balance, we have to rely on 3 major pillars. So the environment, so improving and protecting the environment. So it doesn't it means not to only avoid disturbing the environment, but also means to set the future of our community and through the schools. I feel like Halton is doing a great job on this and promoting many awards, such as the Student Sustainability Leadership Award. Number 2 is social, so promoting these different positive values and participation for all people and equality through the environment. And then there's economic, using these resources efficiently. And if we really take what we can grow from sustaining the environment, we can become a better Halton. Um, uh, and for promoting this, one thing that me and our committee are doing is having a competition between individual students in Halton for filling up the most garbage in around the community. And it's simple. It's as simple as just taking a picture, and this is soon to be released as Green Up Halton. And this will focus on some core values, such as encouraging eco-friendly and green options to promote environmental sustainability, and it'll clean up garbage and help promote littlest lunches. Um, and just like I think that if people know, students know, because they're the future of this community, if they know how like the school can thrive and how they can grow, I feel like the HCSB is in great works.
And if I may just quickly add, Sarah, yeah, I mean, I would love to see, each and every student and staff within the Halton District School Board being part of an action that is sort of a everyone, everywhere, all at once. Where we're all doing something, maybe a small action, but we're all doing it together in a way that is going to. We were all planting trees and with native plants, or we were all cleaning up the environment, or we were all removing invasive species, or we were all we're all doing it. So that's something that I would love to see. And I would love to work with the students and with yourselves about creating something like that, perhaps for next year, seeing that we're almost at the end of this school year. But planning something like that for an environmental day next year, I think is something that would be really impactful. But continue to raise the awareness and to have the conversation is the part that I continue to focus on. And so this is something that I want to see right across the board in every school and in every space, that we're having the conversation, which ultimately will lead to the action.
Yeah, I love that. Everywhere, everyone, everywhere, all at once. I love that idea. That's a great catchline. And Hassan, I really appreciate you bringing in the idea of intersectionality with these issues, with the social, with the economic, with the environment. I just wanted to quickly share this. Was it a tweet? Climate change is a race issue. Climate change is a gender issue. Climate change is an education issue, is a class issue, a justice issue, an ecosystem issue, an animal issue, and health issue. And I think when we're talking about the multi-year plan, I'd really like to see the sustainability start to intersect with all of these other ideas that are happening in our curriculum and in our schools. And I really like, Kalina, the partnerships for the goals. You've got it bang on with that. That it takes a village, and we have so many great partners, and we just need to keep building that network, keep building those relationships to be supportive of one another. So I know we're nearing the end here. Maybe I'll just let everybody, is there any final thoughts or anything pressing that anybody wanted to get out that they haven't shared already?
I can add one last thing, if that's all right with everyone. So I also wanted to just piggyback off of what Hassan said earlier in regards to his three themes of economic, environment, and social. So another thing I think with economic, as students who probably don't have that economic theme instilled within them, as they're not someone that have that freedom to spend and donate to organizations. I think it's important that as leaders, as climate leaders, it's important that we show students how they can create action, how they can create impact within their own communities. It doesn't always have to relate to money itself, because students can take action in another way. If it's volunteering at a local garden or tree planting, which is something that I do with my family annually for Oakville. We do our Oakville tree planting annually in September, and it's a great environment where everyone just comes together, and we have that one conservation area where we each year go and add more and more trees. So I think it's really important that we create a sense of that there's still something you can do. Like, it's not the end of the world that you can't donate to a non-for-profit organization. But when we do talk about economic value or economic interest, I think it's something that it's really worth knowing how, like, we are taking what change we are taking within our communities in regards to money. So I don't know if you are all aware, but Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, which is essentially the pension plan for Ontario teachers all across Ontario, which has like $250 billion worth of net assets, invested $250 million in this American company, which is Savannah Bioenergy LLC, which essentially creates a sustainable means of energy, which is like bioenergy through cow manure. Which, when I read this article, I was literally shocked. I was like, what? How is this possible? Like, through cow manure, they're creating such a sustainable form of energy. And Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, which is a pension plan in Canada, has invested money in this organization in America. That really shows how we are moving forward, even if it's little by little, how we are moving forward as one, to create and foster more sustainable communities, even if it's just little by little. And I think it's also important to notice that a lot of the things that we have started doing, even though it's just bit by bit, the things that we have started to do really stem from ancient civilization culture. So the process of creating bioenergy through cow manure was a very old technique used in ancient India, which is a very old civilization. And I think one way we can really relate to that is a lot of the things that we can take inspiration or learning from is through indigenous connection to the land. So when we look at indigenous communities or the way that they are very resourceful with everything that they have, I think it can really help us move forward together as climate leaders, as people that want to take climate action, how we can stem from that learning and take inspiration on how we can create and foster sustainable communities.
Yes,
Um,
Kalina. Go ahead, Hassan.
Could I add something? I also believe a lot of what Kalina said. She's very well spoken. I believe that the key to environmental sustainability and growth within Halton and in our world lies in mostly promoting our opportunities, awards, and initiatives, and especially to the younger generations, to allow them to grow and do the work that we're doing right now. And how do we do that? Well, we release programs and awards and allow them to be heard, promote them, promote opportunities to them, and to encourage eco-friendly and green options, to increase awareness around sustainable transportation and the importance of utilizing different sources of energy, etc. And I also feel like the UN Sustainable Development Goals are a great way for us to keep us on track and see a bigger vision. And it helps address multiple priorities, and it's the path to where we should be heading as a whole. So by following UN's Sustainable Development Goals, a lot of our projects will support specifically their goals, and it will help create a greater community, a community that will be more privileged where right now it isn't. And I feel like that's a great change.
Yes, thank you, Hassan. And so, just in conclusion and in wrapping up here, this is a quote. We've actually put it on a plaque in the middle of our outdoor classroom because I just find that it is so important to the work that we do. And it's from David Sobel, who is an environmental educator. And he says, if we want children to flourish, to become truly empowered, let us allow them to love the earth before we ask them to save it. And I think that really speaks to some of the passionate connections the students have demonstrated here today, because they've been given that opportunity to have a relationship with the earth. And so I encourage all of us to ensure that we're fostering that love and that relationship with earth before we ask them to save it. Or sometimes we say no doom and gloom too soon at the same time. So yeah, rooting our work in positivity, in hope, in optimism, and in community, because I think there's a lot of power there for us to continue moving forward. So thank you everybody so much for coming and for sharing your ideas. I really enjoyed hearing from everybody and hearing how that's how environmentalism and sustainability looks and from the different perspectives around the board. And then with that, maybe Pardeep, I'll just send it over to you, our Human Rights and Equity Advisor, to sum up the rest of the session.
Great, Sarah, thank you very much. And to all our panel participants, Hassan, Kalina, Director Ennis, and JC, what a wonderful discussion. And I want everybody listening to know that we as a board are committed to environmental leadership and taking action. We have two wonderful system superintendent leads in Superintendent Flahat and Superintendent Gadet, who are taking lead as part of our committee and making sure that there's an accountability measure for us as an organization, and looking at key performance indicators, KPIs, looking at how we want to continue to increase the footprint of eco schools. This whole piece around transportation that was mentioned by Kalina in terms of advocating for Oakville Transit, that's done it for all day. Burlington, I think, has done it for the evenings, but maybe with some more advocacy and push, we can move it that way. And then even looking at some of those barriers still within that, because I know maybe we want to advertise it further too, to let people know that there's going to be some limited time period with the transit agencies to provide free Presto cards as part of this promotion to students and stuff. So we might want to take advantage of that, because it will move us closer to that step, JC, that you talked about, of having that capacity as a system itself, engaging in what we think, because we always say, think globally, but act locally. And so what would that look like for us? Looking at things around transportation and engaging things that are closer, because then we can also think about the double way of engaging the environment, because on the one hand, we are saving money that we might have used for transportation costs to go outside of our geographic area or footprint, and those can be in turn put towards some other eco project within the school piece itself, right? Things like increasing bike racks and stuff. And so we have a committee here at Halton and for environmental leadership, and those are going to be the ways that we're going to be trying to hold ourselves accountable. And so this session was just part of a larger directors panel series on our multi-year strategic plan. And it's so great to hear the intersectionalities. And I remember when we were talking about mental health as part of the first director panel series this year, we did touch upon environment and environmental impact. And today, when we're talking about environment, we did speak to mental health as well. Equally, we also discussed the intersectionality of what our next panel discussion is. And for anybody that's tuned in today, I would encourage you to tune in again for May 16th, when we're going to be hosting our next directors panel series as part of our multi-year strategic plan, looking at Indigenous perspectives and awareness. And I'm sure a number of the topics we've discussed in the first two are also going to be intersecting with respect to Indigenous knowledge and perspectives and awareness for us as a board. And again, it's been an honor and a privilege to hear student voice. It's critical for us as a system, and great to see this great leadership for staff, for Sarah and JC, that you're doing. So continue it, doing what you're doing. It's great to hear of the great initiatives that are happening, and to Director Ennis in terms of this piece that we're looking at next year. JC, I loved your piece around that fashion show, and we're always looking for excuses in senior team to uphold different aspects of the multi-year strategic plan, and maybe we might have our own senior team fashion show through the environmental lens that you talked about. In fact, I think we should do that and host it at your school, maybe, right? And so that's a great idea.
We'd love that.
Oh, absolutely. But because I think it's important, right? We have to be equally invested in environmental leadership, and we have to be able to demonstrate that through our actions. And so definitely always count on our leadership to do the right thing. And once again, thank you very much. This was a great session, and we look forward to our next one on May 16th, looking at Indigenous perspectives and knowledge and awareness. Thank you very much, and have a great night.